Welcome to the Philos Project podcast. I'm your host, Dominique Hoffman, and this week I speak with my colleague, Farhad Rezaei, to discuss Israel and Iran and the state of the region today and the potential outbreak for a larger direct war between Israel and Iran over a year since October 7. This conversation is important as the world waits to see how Israel responds to Iran's direct attack on Israel this October 1st. We've seen Israel conduct direct campaigns to eliminate key Hamas and Hezbollah leaders, which has greatly weakened Iran's deterrence in the region. But will this push Iran to use their nuclear capabilities? And is the Israel-US relationship at stake? All of this and more in the following episode. I hope you enjoy. And welcome to the Philos Project podcast, Farhad. I'm so excited to have you back on, especially with all of the news coming out of the Middle East pertaining to Iran. So welcome.
Hi, Dominique. Thank you very much for having me again.
I'm excited. So a lot has happened actually since we've talked on the podcast. Israel's taken out many heads of Hamas and Hezbollah, including Hassan Nasrallah, which was the most recent kind of big targeted killing, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And of course, there was the pager and the walkie-talkie, very highly discriminate attack against Hezbollah members in Lebanon that Israel carried out. And now we wait to see how Israel responds to Iran's October 1st direct hit, which was about 200 missiles that came into Israel from Iran, and another unprecedented direct attack from Iran on Israel. So a lot has happened. I would love to just get your initial thoughts on the last few months and what this means for the region and the conflict.
Look, what is happening now and in the last few months is the direct result of the October 7th attack in 2023 by Hamas terrorist group. The attack that killed over 1,200 Israeli civilians. Hamas militants killed women and children. They raped women and lots of atrocities. I am sure you and our audience already know about it. Right after the Hamas attack on October 7th, day after that, October 8th, Hezbollah started to shell Israel. Since then, until the pager operation, which you mentioned, Hezbollah attacked Israel with over 9,000 rocket attacks. So Israelis realize that there should be an end to this rocket barrage. Not to mention that over 70,000 Israeli civilians were displaced because of the Hezbollah rocket attacks. So Israelis realized that there should be an end to this rocket attacks by Hezbollah. It should be an end to the aggression by Hezbollah. So they came up with this spectacular attack of pagers. And I think it neutralized over 2,000 Hezbollah operatives. I don't know the exact number, but I can say that large number of high-ranking Hezbollah operatives were neutralized by this pager attack. Why I say that? Because those pagers were only given to the senior ranks in Hezbollah. So overnight, the large number of Hezbollah operatives were neutralized by this pager attack. How it happened, and that's a long but a different story. But this was a spectacular attack by Israel. And then the other things happened. Israel started the decapitation campaign, started to eliminate the senior ranks, including Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah. But trust me, Hassan Nasrallah, compared to the other senior military figures in Hezbollah which were eliminated, was less important because Nasrallah was just a political figure, and its presence, of course, was important. He was a charismatic leader, unlike the previous leader, Mousavi. But still, the people, the military figures, the senior ranks that were eliminated by the Israeli decapitation campaign was from my understanding, was much more important than the elimination of Nasrallah. Anyway, Israel not only eliminated large number of Hezbollah operatives through the pager attack, later on, it eliminated the senior ranks. They eliminated the communication system and the command and control of Hezbollah. And now we are seeing that the IDF eliminates the missile arsenal of Hezbollah. I think the latest assessment by the Israeli defense minister was that over two-thirds of the Israeli missile arsenal has been destroyed. And this is really remarkable.
Is this a significant enough blow to Hezbollah to mitigate their threat to Israel's security, or are they still a pretty significant threat, especially on the northern border?
Look, this operation of all of the things that I mentioned is really, really remarkable, and it's significant. Remember, Hezbollah acted as Iran's deterrence. It acted as the second strike capability of the Iranian regime in the case of a potential attack on Iran's nuclear program by Israel and possibly by the United States, or a joint operation by two of the countries. So now, overnight, Iran's nuclear program has lost its deterrence. It has no protection anymore. Hezbollah was supposed to act as a protection. Now, Iran's airspace is open to Israel, and the nuclear program is open to any potential attack. I'm not sure if Israel and the United States are up to it, but I mean, theoretically speaking, the Iranians lost this protection. And of course, this is remarkable. Iranians have spent over 20 years, spent untold amount of money. They provided Hezbollah with large amount of missiles and rockets and drones and everything, any kind of military ammunition. And overnight, they lost it. So they have lost this second strike capability, and this is really significant.
Well, yeah, that is. I don't think I fully grasp the depth and the implications of the pager operation and then taking out Nasrallah. Because even though you know, as you mentioned, he wasn't the most strategically important figure in Hezbollah, he was this charismatic leader that really united Hezbollah. Why?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I keep coming back to this question: why now? So I've been fascinated over the last 6 months to see Israel shift its offensive campaign against Iran. There was this term coined in the Israel defense kind of circle and space called the Octopus Doctrine, which was this idea back in 2022 that Israel was going to start going after the heads of Iran and Iran's key proxies instead of fighting small battles of attrition. Of course, they took out Fuad Shukr, Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Deif, and then, as I mentioned, Hassan Nasrallah. Why is that significant? And why now? Why did Israel shift their offensive campaign?
Look, as I mentioned, the reason of the shift in the campaign from Hamas to Hezbollah was that Hezbollah also joined the fray against Israel right after the October 7th. On October 8th, they started to shell Israel. They started to harass Israel, which resulted in the displacement of over 70,000 Israeli civilians. That's the reason of shift. But about the Octopus Doctrine, and this is actually a major paradigm shift in Israel, that instead of focusing on fighting the Israeli arms, terror groups, terror proxies, they have to focus on the octopus itself. They have to focus on the head. And this is right, because look, it's been over 45 years that Iran sponsored all of these terror proxies. By the way, Iran sponsors 19 terror proxies against Israel. So during all these time, Israel spent a lot of money, a lot of energy and effort on fighting these terror proxies. And every time it weakened one of those proxies, it gradually, got resurrected. Why? Because because Israel was fighting the arms rather than the head, and the head of the octopus is in Tehran. That's the regime in Iran. And here's the reason. As long as you don't fight the head, this war is going to continue. And as I mentioned, it's been 45 years that this war has been, going on. So this paradigm shift in Israel is that they have to fight the Iranian regime itself. And not to mention that it's actually Iran that brought the war with Israel from shadow war to the direct war. In April, they attacked Israel with a barrage of over 300 ballistic missiles and drones. And then it was very recently on October 1st that once again they attacked Israel with over 200 ballistic missiles. So this war has changed from a shadow war with Israel to a direct war with Israel. And that's where this Octopus Doctrine really makes sense. As long as you don't fight and you don't destroy the source of all of this wars against Israel, it's not going to end. It's not going to end. And no matter how much you weaken Hamas, how much you weaken Hezbollah, the Iranian regime is still there, and it will try to resurrect all of these terror proxies that been weakened. It will try to rebuild their military arsenal. It will try to provide them with money, with whatever they want. So the Octopus Doctrine means that you have to eliminate the source rather than fighting the tentacles.
Mm-hmm. Yet it's always been so curious to me. I feel like Iran's deterrence is largely propped up through fighting the arms instead of directly fighting Iran, because it's quite clear that Iran's capabilities are unmatched to Israel's. And then, of course, there's the concern with Iran being kind of not an irrational actor because they're acting in rationality, but a rogue actor in the international system. Having a nuclear weapon makes it quite unpredictable. You obviously can read Farsi, you read the news coming out of Iran. What is a snapshot from within Iran? What's the news look like? Is Iran in a position to encounter a long-term war with Israel? They're going to try and respond because they know they have to, but try and push off any direct conflict.
Iran's ideology, Iranian regime is an ideological regime. And the main pillar, one of the main pillar of this ideology is fighting Israel and destroying Israel. Okay? So as long as this regime is in power, destroying Israel is one of the goals. Another goal is destroying the United States, fighting the United States. And the third pillar is suppressing women. But our focus for now is on Israel. So as long as this regime is in power, this war is going to continue. I believe that Israel eventually, probably this could be as a part of the Octopus Doctrine, that eventually has to think about regime change, because the war with Israel is not going to end as long as the regime remains in power in Tehran. And not to mention that this regime, as you mentioned, it's an irrational regime by the Western standard. It's an irrational regime. And what can be really terrifying is that this regime obtains nuclear weapons. And you can imagine there is an irrational regime. And by the way, it shows that it's very irrational, and it will make whatever we don't really think of. Many people think that, okay, the regime may seem irrational, but eventually, if they get nuclear weapon, they might behave rationally, which I think this is really wrong. You cannot wait and see Iranians got the weapon, got the nuclear bomb, to see whether they will act rationally and irrationally. I mean, there is no margin of error. You cannot let this regime to obtain nuclear weapon. And unfortunately, they are now very close to it. They're very close to it. They already enriched uranium up to 60%, which is near weapon grade. I mean, from the scientific perspective, when they could enrich up to 60%, it would be very easy for them to enrich to weapon grade, which is 90%. So now I think that it's a perfect opportunity for Israel and the United States jointly to destroy the nuclear sites. It's a perfect opportunity because Hezbollah is not around anymore, or at least it's busy with its own survival. And it would not be able to act as a second strike capability in case of Israel's attacking nuclear sites. So I think the margin of error is really, really narrow. It's close to zero, and Israel can take this opportunity to take out the nuclear weapon, the nuclear program, which is an existential threat to the existence of Israel.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about Iran and their nuclear weapon and their capabilities, but I want to briefly touch on regime change, which you mentioned being a really important step in, or I guess maybe the continued step in the Octopus Doctrine. I thought it was really interesting. Around October 1st, Netanyahu addressed the Iranian people directly and stood in solidarity with the Iranian people. And I thought it was a brilliant move on his part to not only put pressure on Iran by directly targeting and taking out key leaders of their proxies, but to put domestic and internal pressure on the regime. Is there a likelihood for regime change, and what are some of the obstacles and challenges to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we are dealing with a regime that is extremely unpopular. We're dealing with a regime that has zero legitimacy because of a lot of reasons. And also, we are facing a regime that is dealing with lots of crises. It suffers from legitimacy crisis. It suffers from financial crisis. It suffers from environmental crisis, which is not any less than the two other previously mentioned crises. So when you look at this regime, you will see that it's extremely weak. It's extremely weak and suffers from multiple crises, and it's despised by the Iranian nation. They are waiting for external pressure, either by Israel or by the United States. I would say the United States role would probably be more important than the role that Israel might play here. But still, we're talking about the situation. I think it was a smart move by Netanyahu to directly address the Iranian people. He had the same message to the people of Lebanon. So I think this is smart. And the moment that you attack the regime by attacking the nuclear sites, the military bases, and I think another smart move would be the decapitation campaign, the same type of things that they had done to Hezbollah. I think it would be really smart to do it to the Iranian regime as well, and to take out the people who are, behind harassing Israel, behind supporting the terror proxies against Israel. And that includes Ayatollah Khamenei, his sons, and also some of the other political leaders in the regime, as well as the commanders, the senior commanders of the Revolutionary Guards. I think if that happens, and if Israel carries out this mission successfully, we certainly can talk about regime change in Iran as well, because this will give the Iranian people a reason to come to the street and to continue fighting the regime. And eventually, I think it would result in the regime change, for sure.
I pray. At all of our rallies, we always have Iranians come and stand in solidarity with us here in the United States, supporting our Jewish brothers and sisters. And it's a beautiful camaraderie to see, but my heart breaks for the Iranian people. So I can only pray for regime change. I want to circle back to their nuclear capabilities. Do you think this current presidential administration has the will or the desire to see Iran's nuclear facilities destroyed? I know that Israel promised the White House that their response to the October 1st direct attack by Iran would only target key military outposts and not Iran's nuclear facilities or their oil industry. Do you think that is a credible promise? Is Israel interested in eliminating their nuclear capabilities at this moment? And I speculate that maybe if there's a different administration, they might have the willingness to actually follow through with eliminating those facilities. But what do you think their response will kind kind of entail, and will it target the nuclear facilities in Iran?
Look, destroying Iran's nuclear program has been Israel's dream, at least since 2010. Between 2010 and 2012, the Benjamin Netanyahu's government many times, Netanyahu and his defense minister Ehud Barak, many times wanted to attack Iran's nuclear program, but the security cabinet in the Israeli government opposed the decision. They opposed the decision for the right reason, for a legitimate reason. The first reason was that the United States does not support this act. And it's really important for Israel to have the support, the political support and the military support of the United States. Not to mention that David Ben-Gurion, the founding father of the Israeli state, said Israel always has to have a support of a superpower, especially in wars. But when it comes to destroying Iran's nuclear program, support of the United States is really important because not only the United States is a superpower, but it also has the means to destroy the nuclear program of Iran. But Israel, unfortunately, does not have it. They don't have the required bombs that can penetrate the underground, the mountain, and destroy those underground sites. Israel does not have it. So the support of the United States is really important here. And the second reason that the Israeli security cabinet opposed the attack was Hezbollah. But now the situation is somehow changed. Hezbollah is not able to act as such anymore. Hezbollah is fighting for its survival, right? But still, Biden administration opposes the move. As far as I understand, this was a big disagreement between President Biden and Netanyahu that Israel should not try to attack nuclear sites. And apparently they reached this agreement because there was recently on the news that they announced they are going to attack the military sites only. Again, I need to say that this is a perfect opportunity for Israel to attack nuclear sites. I am not in a position to say what Israel should do and not what should not do. But I am saying that if they do it, this is a perfect opportunity. And the Biden administration should also help them. I don't see a reason why not. Iran is in the weakest position during the 45 years of its existence. Hezbollah is not around anymore. There is a significant opposition inside Iran from the Iranian nation. Iran is facing huge economic problem and it suffers from a significant legitimacy crisis. They would not be in a position to respond to Israel in a significant way. That's why I think it's a golden opportunity for both Israel and the United States to move ahead with this operation.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. It blows my mind that the Biden administration would not support such a move just because it also is in our own nation's security and interest.
Yeah, and one thing that I need to add is the Iranian potential response to this. I would say that, well, I don't think their response would be so, groundbreaking. Their final move would be something like the ballistic missile attack. That was recently, they conducted a missile attack, 200 missiles, less than 200, 180 missiles, and nothing happened. Not to mention that they recently received the TOT defense system from the United States, which is another layer of defense to the Israeli airspace. Well, this is good. This is a good move by Israel and the United States, but it also may have a security implication. And the security implication is that if Iranians think that their missiles are not going to penetrate the Israeli airspace anymore because of this TOD, and of course, Israel defense system also, it's also powerful, but this TOD is, something that guarantees Israel's safety. And if Iranians think that it makes their missiles incapable of doing anything remarkable, then they may think about the nuclear option. That's where makes the attacking of the nuclear sites essential, that you have to do it. Now that this thought system ending up in Israel may make a different calculation in Iran that may change their mind and think about the nuclear option from now on, then you have to take out the nuclear program before giving them this chance to decide to break out with a nuclear weapon.
Scary. No, but I 100% agree. And we've seen the Biden administration putting pressure and putting conditions on defense capabilities to Israel, on humanitarian aid in Gaza. So this is also kind of happening simultaneously. So we do see the current administration restraining Israel's response. In closing, just because we have
That's very unfortunate. Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so unfortunate. And in closing, one of the questions I've had for you, because you've mentioned this quite a bit over the last 6 months, is that the upcoming election will have large implications on the region. Do you believe, depending on a different outcome, the different counterfactual, I guess, administrations, is Iran going to be more empowered if there's, a Kamala administration, which would just be a continuation of the Biden administration? Should Israel be concerned? I kind of think that's why Israel is acting so aggressively now, is because they see maybe the writings on the wall that should there be a Kamala presidency, the status quo of the U.S.-Israel relationship could change, and they know just for their own security, they have to act now. Would you agree with that? What do you think could happen come November?
Look, if Kamala Harris elected president of the United States, there would be no meaningful change in the U.S. approach towards Iran, because that would be, Kamala Harris would be the continuation of Biden administration. Just like Biden administration was the continuation of Obama administration. So there would not be a remarkable change in the United States approach towards the Iranian regime. And what really scares me is that if that happens, Iran would break out with a bomb. Because let's not forget that it was during this administration that Iran decided to develop its nuclear program and bring it up to par. During Trump administration, they did not dare to enrich more than 3.65%. But now they enrich uranium up to 60%, which is very close to the weapon grade enrichment. So that really concerns me. If Kamala Harris elected as president, Iranians may try to break out, because they don't scared of Biden administration. They don't scared of Kamala Harris administration. And they may try to break out with a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not a political statement for either of us to say that. It's just the reality that the Biden administration has empowered financially by waiving sanctions. There was the horrible prisoner exchange.
Certainly, it's not a political statement. I mean, look at the record of Biden administration when it comes to Iran. Again, during President Trump, the situation was entirely different. And the nuclear program, they did not have such a progress. They did not make such a progress. And from the economic perspective, during the President Trump, there was a maximal pressure campaign in place. But now we are facing a whole different situation. Iranians are, selling oil freely to China. They sell approximately 2 million barrels of oil per day. And that's a disaster. So this is not a political statement. This is the reality that we are witnessing with regards to Iran.
No, and I couldn't agree more. And it's even more baffling from a national security standpoint that we allow Iran to sell crude oil to China, who is our biggest international adversary. And there's this axis of chaos between Iran, China, and Russia that is forming to rival the United States in the West. So it's quite dangerous. Farhad, does Israel have the support of other Arab nations in the region in their fight against Iran?
Arab nations were about to normalize their relationship with Israel as a part of the Abraham Accords. As a matter of fact, number of Arab nations already normalized with Israel. Just the only remaining one, and the most important one, in fact, was Saudi Arabia. That's why October 7 happened. Iran directed Hamas to carry out that spectacular terrorist attack, that brutal terrorist attack, so that they can torpedo any chance of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But now the situation has changed. Israel gained power, it gained upper hand with regards to Iran and dealing with the terror groups. It almost eliminated Hamas. It somehow eliminated the military power of Hezbollah. And I think once Israel managed to clobber the Iranian regime as well, then this will give, enough will and opportunity and power to Saudi Arabia as well to normalize with Israel. I think, look, eventually Arab nations will normalize with Israel because they know that normalization with Israel bring them peace and prosperity. And who doesn't want peace and prosperity, right? So eventually they will normalize with Israel because they know that Israel is not their enemy, but it's the Iranian regime that is their enemy. So normalization is going to happen. I am sure about that.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to, praying for regime change in Iran, normalization in the region, peace again, peace through strength. Farhad, thank you so much. We'll have to keep an eye out on how Israel responds.
Apart from, yes, we always have to pray for that. But look, Bible teaches us not only to pray, but to take action as well, right? So yeah, it teaches us to take action as well. And we have to move in that direction. Regime change in Iran will result in peace and prosperity in the entire Middle East. So we have to move in that direction. We have to empower the Iranian nation to overthrow the regime, to establish peace. Let's not forget that the Iranian nation is probably the most West loving nation in the Middle East. So we have to empower them. The most Israel loving nation in the Middle East, we have to help them, right? We have to move in that direction. We have to take action.
Absolutely. And we'll be looking at how Israel does respond to Iran. I'm sure it'll be in the coming days, if not the coming weeks, but I know that there'll probably be a response before the elections here in the United States. So we'll be keeping an eye out on that. And maybe we'll come back and we'll have a conversation, Farhad, on what all of that means and if some of our predictions or our concerns or hopes come true. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Dominique.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Philos Project podcast. This is one analysis that will be ongoing as we look to see how Israel responds to Iran in the coming days, if not weeks, before the US presidential election. If you would like to learn more about diplomacy or the Middle East at large, I encourage you to check out our Pathfinder courses, which I'll link in the description box below. And I encourage you to follow Farhad Rezaei on X and through the Philos Project. He is our Iranian expert, and he will be following the developments in Israel's response to Iran closely. The Philos Project is a nonprofit, and if you feel so led to give to educational offerings such as this podcast, I will leave a donation link in the description box below. Please comment any questions, agreements, disagreements you have in the comment section down below, and I will try and respond to them there. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.